Uncle Peter, I'm Jose, and my childhood was a nightmare because of my Uncle Peter, or so he claimed to be. I can't recall his face clearly. Sometimes he was tall and blonde, other times short, bald, or dark-skinned, as if my mind reinvented him each time I thought of him. I don't know when he came into our lives. One day he was just there in our decrepit apartment. My parents acted like it was normal, but when I asked who he was, they'd exchanged nervous glances and stay silent. My grandmother once coughed until she nearly choked when I mentioned his name. She never explained why. Peter didn't have a room. He lived inside a crack in the hallway wall, a deep black hole that seemed to swallow light and emit a bone-chilling cold. Every night I watched him slide into it, his body contorting in impossible ways as if the wall absorbed him. During the day he emerged with a crooked smile and eyes that sometimes glowed yellow in the dim light. I tried looking into the crack once, but a freezing cold stopped me as if something was watching me from the other side. Peter didn't work. He claimed to be an athlete of blood sports, but never explained what that meant. He ate raw meat, tearing it with his teeth in front of me, and hid under my bed or clung to the ceiling, letting out inhuman screams that sounded otherworldly. He read me disturbing books like The Shining, Mein Kampf, and the Necronomicon, filling me with nightmares. One night I saw him on the ceiling, his skin torn, revealing rotten green bones. That image haunted me for years. I saw him bite off my father's finger with a crunch and leave him lame after a failed shotgun blast. My parents never confronted him, as if an invisible force bound them to him. The maid tried to clean the crack but disappeared after touching it. Peter emerged and whispered, "Never enter my room," with a voice that froze my blood. No one mentioned her again, as if she'd never existed. My friends and neighbors started disappearing. A friend vanished after a fire when I saw Peter on his wall, skin stitched and green bones glowing. The neighborhood became a ghost town. At 15, I brought my girlfriend Carol home. The lights failed and a lightning flash revealed Peter in the corner, smiling. Carol screamed and vanished. Days later, they found her mutilated in an alley. That night I saw Peter eating something raw in the kitchen, but I couldn't confront him. At 17, the police arrived and found hundreds of bodies in the building's walls and basement. Some fresh, others mummified. They arrested us, but Peter wasn't there. I saw him from the window disguised as a policeman, his skin rotting and green bones visible under the moonlight. He smiled and slipped into the crack. I don't know if he was real or a projection of my mind, but his laughter still echoes in my head and I feel something watching me from that hole. Terror of Daniel LaPlante. I'm Sarah, and in 1987 I lived a nightmare I'll never forget. One that marked me forever. It all started with Daniel LaPlante, a boy I dated once, unaware he'd become my worst terror, a monster hiding closer than I could have imagined. Daniel was a young man with an empty gaze and a crooked smile. Someone who always gave me a bad feeling, but I never imagined what he was capable of. That year, he broke into a local nursery school with a rusty machete in hand and weapon that looked like it had been used many times before. The teacher, a sweet woman who loved children, didn't stand a chance. Daniel attacked her with inhuman fury, leaving the classroom splattered with blood, desks overturned, and a silence that weighed like lead. Then, he turned to the two small children in her care. Their screams faded quickly, but the echo of their terror still lingers in the town, a reminder of what Daniel was capable of. The police launched a massive manhunt, searching dark forests and abandoned houses. but Daniel seemed to have vanished into thin air, as if the earth itself had swallowed him. I knew him. I dated him briefly, and though I always felt something off about him, I never imagined he'd go this far. One night I felt a chill as I entered my room, a sensation that made my skin crawl. Something was wrong. I opened the closet, and there was Daniel, motionless, like a grotesque statue. His face was covered in makeup, stolen from my mother, his lips twisted into a ghastly smile that looked carved with a knife. He wore my mother's floral dress hanging off him like dead skin, and in his hands he clutched a machete stained with dried blood, the same one he'd used for his crimes. I screamed with all my might, but Daniel knocked me to the ground and tied up my family with moldy ropes, his eyes gleaming with a madness that didn't seem human, as if something else possessed him. My younger brother, only 8 years old, managed to break free and ran barefoot through the icy rain to get help, his small feet leaving prints in the mud. The police arrived quickly, but Daniel was gone. He'd vanished like a ghost. We moved immediately, too terrified to stay in that house. But 2 weeks later, we had to return for our belongings, hearts in our throats. As I loaded a box, I felt a sudden chill that pierced my body. I looked up at the second floor window, and there was Daniel, staring at me through the fogged glass, his face dirty, eyes sunken as if he hadn't slept in days, as if he'd been stalking me all that time. My family screamed and called the police, who stormed the house with urgency. They didn't find Daniel at first until they heard a sinister creak in the walls. The officers broke through the hallway plaster, and what they found chilled their blood. Daniel had been living inside the walls the whole time. He dug narrow tunnels, filled with rotting food scraps and clothes stolen from my family. Items that had been disappearing bit by bit. In a corner they found a drawing scratched into the wood. A faceless figure holding a machete, a harbinger of his evil. Daniel was hiding in a crevice, his body filthy and trembling, but his eyes still held that pure malice. As they took him away in handcuffs, he looked at me and whispered, "I'll come back for you," in a voice that didn't sound like his own. They arrested him, but his story doesn't end there. Some say that on quiet nights you can still hear creaks in the walls of that house, as if something or someone is still inside, waiting. The tape of Kelly, I'm Jose, and 6 years ago I married Kelly, but yesterday I found a tape that changed everything I thought I knew about her. We met in 2014 at Mexico City International Airport, waiting for a late-night flight to London. Kelly was sitting at a bar, her eyes red from crying. She noticed my pilot's stripes and asked if I was flying far. I told her I'd be her pilot and joked about reading, flying for dummies. She laughed, but her laugh was hollow. She told me she'd left her husband Michael during their honeymoon because he was an abuser and a liar, forced her to lie, and said he'd emptied her. Words that echoed in my mind for a decade. I fell in love with her that night. We spent a week together in London. She was terrified of returning to Cambridge, fearing Michael, and refused to report him, which I found strange. I visited her every time I flew to England, even taking a flight from Paris to London just to see her. When she moved to Brighton, I'd take the train to her new apartment. A year later, I moved to England. In 2017, we bought a house, and in 2018, we married. Yesterday, while tidying a storage cupboard, an old camcorder fell out among the clutter. I turned it on. The date was September 10th, 2014, a week before I met Kelly, her wedding night with Michael. I saw her emerge from the bathroom in lingerie waiting on the bed, but something in the walls chilled my blood. They seemed alive with something hidden in the paint. Michael was filming, his breathing heavy, hungry, not with desire but with something darker. Kelly whispered, "Get rid of that camera," but he kept recording, looked at an empty corner and said, "If I must." The wall bulged as if something inside was trying to break out, a shape shifting from human to monstrous. Kelly screamed, "What's wrong with your face, Michael?" I saw nothing odd in him, but she did. Then he plunged his arm into her mouth, his entire forearm up to his shoulder as she writhed. He pulled out a copy of her, an identical Kelly emerging from her throat, screaming while the original crumpled into an empty dress on the bed. A shadow crossed the screen. The tape cut out with deafening static. I hid the camera, but Kelly came home, looked at me with blank eyes and repeated, "If I must," staring at an empty corner. I ran, drove non-stop, and at 2 a.m. in a parking lot. I woke to static. I saw a truck. Its side bulged, revealing a silhouette trying to break through, then vanished. I don't know what that thing wants, but it found me. Help me before it empties me like it did Kelly.